I bargained with humanity to not touch my family. But here we are. Justice for Linda Beardy.
Hundreds of people rallied on Friday to honor 33-year-old Linda Beardy. The mother of four was a member of Manitoba's Lake St. Martin First Nation. Surveillance video shows Beardy climbing into a garbage bin in Winnipeg on Monday, and she was not seen climbing out. Police say there's no evidence her death is a homicide, but her family is calling for an independent investigation. Earlier, I spoke with the mayor of Winnipeg about his reaction to Beardy's death and how his city is trying to support Indigenous women and girls. Mayor Gillingham, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I want to start, obviously, with asking you about the discovery of the body of Linda Beardy in the Winnipeg landfill. Police say it is not a homicide. It was a tragic accident. What's your reaction to this incident?
But it's heartbreaking news. We did hear the police response. They did their investigation, and they've explained that it just seems to have been a tragic accident. That doesn't make it any less heartbreaking. I know that many in the community are grieving right now, and so I want to offer my condolences to Linda Beardy's family, her children, the Indigenous community members as well, and at such a time of loss.
The Beardy landfill, I believe, is reopened. At least that's what police were saying earlier in the week, because they were finished their investigation. But I'm sure you heard members of the community and the chief saying that they wanted it closed permanently, that they wanted a memorial site, and that it is disturbing to them that it remains opened as a landfill.
Well, I have been and continue to work with the Indigenous leaders, Grand Chief Kathy Merrick and others, and I'm certainly want to support the Indigenous leaders of our community. I know there's a feasibility study right now to look at the possibility of searching landfills, and we've been supportive of that, or remain supportive. The Beardy landfill is a very large landfill, and currently it's really a series of landfills, a series of cells. And the cell that's being used right now has only been used since the summer. All the other cells that have been used historically are capped off and isolated. And so if there is a search to be done, a historic search, that can be done without disrupting the current operations.
So it would be complicated to close this part of the landfill, even just out of respect for Linda? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, somewhat complicated, but as I said, we want to continue to work with the Indigenous leaders, and I acknowledge the grief, I acknowledge the pain, and we are working in cooperation together. And so we'll continue to have dialogue with them.
Obviously, this tragic accident comes in the wake of the belief that there are remains of two other women in a different landfill in Winnipeg. Those women allegedly killed by a serial killer. That's at the Prairie Green landfill, where, as you said, there's a feasibility study to see what it would take to try and find those remains. What role would the city play after that study is done, if it goes ahead? And how important do you think it is for that work to happen?
Well, the Prairie Green landfill is actually not in Winnipeg. It's actually in an adjacent municipality in the arm of Rossiter. But we as a city have been supportive of the feasibility study, and we're willing to partner. I know I've talked to Minister Mark Miller and appreciate his responsiveness. We talked to him just recently as this past week, and have indicated again that if there is to be a study, if there is to be a search, it would really require resources and participation from the federal and provincial governments as well.
And what? So I take your point. It's not right in Winnipeg, but what would you do? Would you offer people, resources? What would you be able to offer as a city?
I think we certainly would be willing to, hear from the community, the Indigenous community, to see how we could assist. I don't exactly know right now. There's been no specific ask as far as what could be required. So we need to wait to get the outcome of that feasibility study. And like I said, we're really willing to partner to bring some closure to families.
I guess there's a bigger issue here, Mayor, as you know, and this is in relation to missing and murdered Indigenous women and how they are treated and how they are looked for. what is, if anything, has the City of Winnipeg done to respond to some of the calls to action from the MMIWG? Certainly there's been criticism the federal government is not moving quickly enough. I don't know if you share that criticism, but if I could just get your view on what should be done.
Well, I can tell you here in Winnipeg, we're very actively and intentionally focused on fulfilling, the municipal-related MMIWG calls to action. The City of Winnipeg's Indigenous Relations Division is working with community members and us as Mayor and Council to implement some changes. Most recently, we changed our bylaws related to taxis and vehicles for hire to make it safer, transportation safer for Indigenous women and girls. So we heard directly from community members who expressed concern about, the way they've been treated in the past. Mm-hmm. And so now there's fines in place for taxi drivers and vehicle for hire drivers. There's training that's been being put into place as well. That's one of the things that we have done specific to the MMIWG. Calls for justice. I also worked last year when I was still a city councillor. Myself and other councillors worked with some local Indigenous leaders and Diane Redsky, Joyce Smith, the Joyce Smith Foundation, to end the licensing of body rub parlors in Winnipeg, because we heard from leaders in the Indigenous community that too often those body rub parlors could be places where vulnerable Indigenous women and girls were taken advantage of. So I'm really committed. We're committed as a city to work in partnership with our Indigenous leaders as well to make it safer for women and girls. Indigenous women and girls have got to be valued. We have to do a better job of that.
What about just supports that are offered? Obviously, in the case of Linda Beardy, she was looking for something. She needed something, and we'll see what more her family knows about that, or her community knows about it. But is the city doing enough to support the many First Nations people who leave their communities and come into Winnipeg and live in Winnipeg?
Rosemary, I can tell you that specifically is an active topic of discussion that I have with local Indigenous leaders. And I talked just recently this week with Minister saying about that we have so many in Winnipeg, so many Indigenous community members that move from perhaps the northern community into Winnipeg, and making sure that we are working together so that they have the supports that they need. One of the things that we've done at the city is we're working with the federal government and the Rapid Housing Initiative funding, as well as working with partner organizations. I know that just recently there has been new units opened in our community with the Rapid Housing funding, specifically for Indigenous women and girls. And so we just need more of that. As I said, we've got to work collaboratively to make sure that Indigenous women and girls are protected and valued.
And just to end on that, is there a focus trying to get some of these First Nations women, girls, men, whoever, children, out of hotels, which is where many people end up when they first come to Winnipeg, into more permanent housing? Is that part of the goal there?
Yeah, it is part of the goal, absolutely. In Winnipeg, we're similar to many other cities, and that we need more housing at every level. And certainly we need safe housing, and for those individuals in our community that may be struggling with mental health challenges or addiction issues, we need the housing with the wraparound supports as well. So we'll continue to work towards making Winnipeg a safer, healthier city for all, especially for Indigenous women and girls.
Mayor Gillingham, nice of you to make the time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rosemary.